Welcome to a different type of FPL video. This is going to be the best differentials, but I'm making an entire team which costs 100 million. So if you're kind of bored or tired of all these templates, everyone going for the same old big at the back formation, maybe the same old premiums like Salah and Haaland, well, this will be entirely different, and this could be your entire squad heading into the 2022-23 season, and you can still do an exceptional job with these players that I'm going to pick. Now, I'm actually going to break down the stats of 14 players, but only one of the two premiums I'm going to be talking about make the final cut, and it's very difficult to separate the two of them. But let's try to get this video to 200 likes. If you enjoy this video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. It really helps out the channel. And let's just jump straight into this. Just as a kind of side note, it's not just about having these players that have really low ownership, and to be fair, out of all the players that I'm picking out here today, the highest ownership is 10%, so the majority of them will be in the single digit mark. But it's also about the combination of players, so even if you have Trent, who's going to be owned by most people in the game, having him alongside Robertson is a differential in itself. The same goes for having Son, who's around 26% ownership, alongside Harry Kane. These combination of players is also your way of being different and separating yourself from the rest of the pack. But with Emi Martinez, he's only 4.7% owned. There's other really good differential goalkeepers like Nick Pope and Hugo Lloris who are going under the radar, but I really want to highlight Martinez because most people will be going for Matty Cash or maybe Luca Dean to cover Aston Villa defence, and the majority going for the Polish wingback. Martinez scored 186 points in the 2020-21 season. Incredible stuff. Probably the best goalkeeper performance in an entire FPL season, especially considering his price, starting at 4.5 million. In the last campaign, though, a bit underwhelming, only 129 points, nowhere near the amount of saves, penalty saves, bonus points, and clean sheets, but still a good outing. 11 clean sheets in the last season. Also, he had 63 big chances conceded, which isn't great, but it's also not the worst. You also have an expected goals conceded of just under 50, and some decent stuff across the board. 48 goals conceded, 442 shots conceded. Not great, but also not too bad, and I think Villa will kind of settle down a little bit, but under Steven Gerrard, I'm mainly interested in their attacking assets, so this might be a bit risky, and at the same price, you could just go for Nick Pope, and to be honest, I think Newcastle will get more clean sheets throughout the whole season, but you could argue over the first 6 game weeks, arguably, Aston Villa have a better set of fixtures than Newcastle, but that's certainly up for debate. Arsenal away is the toughest one, you could say, in the first 5 game weeks for Aston Villa. Also, West Ham at home isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but Martinez at 4.7% ownership is definitely, he's got high ceiling. I think he can score a lot of points, maybe even 140 plus. I can see him improving slightly on the last campaign, but in terms of reaching the 186 point mark, which he did 2 seasons ago, I think that's maybe a bit out of reach for the Argentine. Robertson is one of 2 players in this list that have exactly 10% ownership, which is the highest of any player we're going to be discussing today. So Robertson has 3 goals and 11 assists in the last campaign. He was also the 3rd highest scoring defender with 186 points, and he's always one of the best FPL options. The problem is with Liverpool that you have Diaz, Nunez, Jota, Salah, Trent, and also Alisson this year, who are all great FPL assets. So I don't think it's that simple, despite how much I rate Robertson and I think he could actually match or even outscore Trent this season. It's still very difficult to fit him into your team, and I haven't seen many drafts with both of the fullbacks in, and that's still a really good way of differentiating yourself from the rest of the crowd. Really good stats across the board, good underlying numbers. Yes, there's overperformance, but there's always going to be some degree of overperformance with the likes of Trent and Robertson. I really like his big chances created and also big chances. He scored 3 goals, which is more than Trent, and I think in terms of the goals scored, it will be very similar between the two. From open play though, you'd still back the Scotsman, and I think Robertson is going vastly under the radar, and we should definitely consider him. I'm even actually considering the possibility of going for him over Trent Alexander-Arnold, as much as I'd love to have both, but I'm still going to be open-minded before game week 1. Just do not forget Andy Robertson and how much he outperformed Trent from game weeks 13 all the way until the end of the last season. We are going for a second Liverpool defender in this list. Joel Matip stands at only 2.9% ownership, and the jump from 5 to 6 million makes him a lot less appealing. I'm not going to deny that, but I still think he's a great option and offers potentially better value than Virgil van Dijk. 3 goals and 3 assists, a lot of bonus points, good underlying numbers. There's much to like about Joel Matip. The main concern would be, will Klopp actually continue with his policy from last season where Konate played in the Cup, such as the Champions League, and Joel Matip predominantly plays in the Premier League. If that's the case, then that's great news for Joel Matip and he becomes a serious FPL option. Otherwise, I would definitely be put off, but we're not going to find out until we see the lineups in game week 1, so it's going to be very difficult to see. It's going to be a huge risk, but I think if Matip can secure those minutes in the Premier League and be the main centre-back with Virgil van Dijk, I think he's going to be a great FPL option once again. Only 16 points fewer than Robertson, so do not underestimate how good the Cameroonian can be. Aymeric Laporte was identical to Joel Matip last season, Matip being the 5th highest scoring FPL defender and Laporte being the 6th highest, only 10 points separating the two, and they both come in at the exact same price. Only 5.1% ownership for Laporte, and I honestly prefer covering Man City defence with Laporte over Cancelo than I would with Matip over Robertson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, etc. That's the way I think about it. So if I had to pick between Laporte and Matip, I probably would go for the Spanish centre-back. 4 goals and 2 assists. Only Gabriel scored more goals amongst defenders last season. Decent underlying numbers, and there's a lot to like. City, the best defence in the last few years in the Premier League. So I would go for him. A really good set of opening fixtures, not just in the first 5 or 6, and it's really good to look short term this year with the possibility to use 2 wildcards in essence before game week 17 and we break off for the World Cup, but also a bit longer term. The first 10 game weeks of the season, Man City ranked top of the fixture ticker on Fantasy Football Hub. So Aymeric Laporte is a really good option, and I wouldn't mind going for him over Joao Cancelo despite the golfing class in the attacking department. Sven BOTMAN was linked to a number of big clubs throughout the last year or so. He signed for around 35 million this summer, and he's a really good signing, I think. Let's see if he beds in and does well, but on paper it definitely looks pretty promising, and he is very highly rated. I like Newcastle's long-term fixtures, but as you can see in the opening 5, it doesn't look too appealing. Even in game week 6, I don't think it's that great either, but 4.4% ownership for BOTMAN, and he will be the main centre-back for Newcastle. Will Fabian Schär see a decline in his minutes? It's a possibility. I think that will be the main centre-back partnership, BOTMAN and Schär, but I think Schär will be the more likely of the two to be dropped for the likes of Dan Burn and a few others. But BOTMAN, keep an eye on him. Yes, we all want to look at Nick Pope, Fabian Schär potentially, and Kieran Trippier, who all have much higher ownerships, especially Kieran Trippier, but I really like BOTMAN with that low ownership, and at 4.5 million, I think he can offer really good value for money. I'd expect Newcastle to be right up there this season in the Premier League table, and also in terms of clean sheets, I could see them maybe even keeping 12 or more, and if BOTMAN plays all the games, that is just great news, and you find yourself a really good option at that price point. Lewis Dunk didn't have a great season FPL-wise. He saw fewer minutes, more injuries. He only scored 92 points in the last campaign, but in every season since 2017-18, he has scored a goal, and he is the highest scoring defender over the last 3 or 4 campaigns in total. Only 1 goal in the last season, but then you look at the season before that, and he scored 5 goals. So do not underestimate Lewis Dunk. And Brighton might struggle a little bit with their outgoings like Bissouma to Spurs, and you also have Cucurella potentially on the verge of going to Manchester City, and they might be weakened overall, but I still think Lewis Dunk at 4.5 million offers really good value for money, and he could be one of the best, if not the best, budget defender at your disposal. So he's going under the radar, only 1.8% ownership, which is the lowest I think from the defenders we've covered so far, and also players in general. So Lewis Dunk, do not forget about him, and I think if you're looking for a Brighton defender, he is the go-to guy. Raheem Sterling is on the verge of joining Chelsea. Only 163 points last season, but the 8th highest scoring midfielder in the game. Only De Bruyne scored more FPL points amongst Man City midfielders, and he's actually had 3 seasons where he scored 200 plus points, which is incredible, and Sterling will be the main man at Chelsea, and I think that makes him much more appealing. If he had stayed at City, I don't think I'd be covering him at all, but the fact that he's on the verge of becoming the talisman for Chelsea, I think that just spells great news, and he becomes a serious FPL option once again, and we suddenly have a decision to make in terms of the midfielders. You could even go for someone like Sterling alongside Heung-min Son or Mohamed Salah, and it's very difficult to fit those two in the same team, but a bit easier with these 10 million midfielders. 13 goals and 7 assists last season, very good stuff, great underlying numbers, 25 big chances. Now there may be a drop off in terms of big chances because Man City have a much better team and creation than Chelsea, but you never know, and I think Sterling is very underrated throughout his whole Premier League career, and he's going to score goals, maybe even 15 plus, and he can still get those assists at the same time. So Sterling could be a great signing for Chelsea, and I think he could also be a fantastic FPL option at only 3.5% ownership. The issue lies in terms of picking between Bruno or Sterling as your differential midfielder, pretty much the same price and also the same ownership. 3.6% for Bruno, and at this time last year I think it was something like 40%, I don't remember exactly, but him and probably Mohamed Salah were the two most popular FPL options. Things haven't gone according to plan, but still a decent season in terms of the numbers, 10 goals and 7 assists, and also in terms of the FPL points, 151, so is the 11th highest scoring midfielder, which isn't great by his standards. Remember, he got 244 the season before that, incredible stuff, and we were all talking about finding a way to fit him, Heung-min Son and Mohamed Salah in our FPL teams. They were the three best, and if Ronaldo leaves Man United, I actually think Bruno Fernandes suddenly becomes a much better FPL option because he becomes the talisman once again. Everything goes through him. He's on penalties, which is an added bonus. He gets more bonus points in general. The opening fixtures I don't really like too much from Manchester United, but I still think Bruno against the likes of Brighton, who he has a really good record against, I think he could do a great job, and he is definitely going under the radar. But if Ronaldo stays at United, which is unlikely but still possible, then I wouldn't be as appealed by Bruno Fernandes, and actually it'd become a bit easier when we decide between Sterling and Bruno Fernandes. But there's only a spot for one of these two players in this best differential team. Let me know who you would pick between the two, but Bruno Fernandes is still a great FPL option, especially if he becomes the main man once again. I know many FPL managers are put off JARROD Bowen's price hike, but he deserves it. I mean, look at the season he had. I don't think he's going to exactly match that, but I still expect some big returns from JARROD Bowen, who is the main man for West Ham. And in FPL, we always love these players who are the main player, attacker for these clubs, and everything goes through them. 12 goals and 17 assists. I'd expect a similar amount of goals, and perhaps even more this time round, but fewer assists. There was a huge overperformance in terms of expected assists compared to the actual assist output, but still, you never know. 10% ownership for Bowen, so he's the joint highest Robertson in terms of the ownership in this list. And I haven't talked about him enough in recent videos, but throughout the kind of price reveals, I've basically been saying that he is worth that price, and I still think he's a great option. That Man City fixture does put me off, but remember what he did in Game Week 37 last season when he got a double-digit return against the champions, and he can do it against anyone. That's the great thing about Bowen. And if we actually talk about his FPL points, he got 206 last season. For someone who started at 6.5 million, that is incredible, to be quite frank. And he was also the fourth highest scoring player overall, and in terms of midfield, only behind Heung-min Son and Salah, who is the highest scoring player in the entire game. So when we're looking at JARROD Bowen, don't be too off-put by that Man City fixture, because he can still do really well in that. But of course, it's very difficult to justify having JARROD Bowen, who's going to be 0.5 million more expensive than the likes of Diaz, MADDISON, Mount, etc., who all have a better start to the season arguably. You also have that Tottenham fixture in Game Week 5, not too appealing, but I still think JARROD Bowen is an exceptional FPL option this season. James Maddison had an incredible FPL season last time out and went under the radar because we had Mason Mount, Bukayo Saka, JARROD Bowen and many others who did a great job as well. But Maddison, whenever he's fit, can pull out this kind of consecutive run of games where he just constantly delivers returns, even some huge ones. He was a hero for me in Game Week 37 on my free hit. 12 goals and 11 assists, that's more than the likes of Saka, Mason Mount and all these great midfielders who've done a fantastic job last season. Good underlying numbers, but there was overperformance in both metrics, but that just comes down to the quality that James Maddison possesses. In terms of FPL points last season, he scored 181, which was the 5th highest amongst midfielders, and he also got 24 bonus points. And remember, he didn't play that many games or minutes. He sometimes came off the bench, and there was also the Conference League that Leicester were really honing in on. A bit of a challenging start to the season, a bit similar to JARROD Bowen with Chelsea and Arsenal in Game Weeks 2 and 4, but still a really good player. I think he could do well in all of those fixtures. Also Man United in Game Week 5. It's not the greatest start, but you look at Brentford at home in Game Week 1 and also Southampton at home in Game Week 3. I think those are great fixtures where Maddison could really pull up some huge FPL returns. Riyad Mahrez is a very frustrating player in FPL. I really like him in UCL Fantasy when he gets the minutes, but it isn't exactly the same in the Premier League. However, with the exit of Gabriel Jesus, who played a lot on the right wing last season, as well as Raheem Sterling, this opens the door for Riyad Mahrez to be the out-and-out main right winger at Manchester City. He is going to have some competition by the likes of Alvarez, who can play on the wings, as well as up front, and you've also got Cole Palmer, watch out for him, but Riyad Mahrez should play the vast majority, unless Manchester City signs someone else in the transfer window, which I wouldn't wouldn't rule out. And he only had around 1,400 minutes last season, and he only scored 2 points fewer than Foden, despite playing 600 to 700 minutes fewer. So it really shows what Mahrez is capable of, and he had some really big returns. Whenever he did start, he actually got quite a lot of 9-pointers and also double-digit returns. So RIYAD Mahrez could be fantastic. Only 4% ownership. And out of the Man City midfielders, apart from De Bruyne, who is maybe a bit too expensive, I think Mahrez could actually be the go-to Man City attacker of choice, apart from Erling Haaland, but of course he doesn't have any place in this video with his ridiculous ownership. Jamie Vardy is a bit similar to RIYAD Mahrez last season, where he didn't have too many minutes, but whenever he did get those starts, he did a fantastic job. 15 goals in 25 games, and also, you look at the ownership, it's actually identical, 4.1% compared to Mahrez's 4%, and he also got 24 bonus points, a bit similar to James Maddison, and I think that attacking duo could be great. Not just the fact that both of them have under 10% ownership, but the combination of Jamie Vardy and Maddison will be very rare. The problem is, having those opening games, would you double up on Leicester? Maybe not, and that is the main issue. But I still think Vardy and Maddison are that good that they can do really well in those tougher games, as well as those Southampton and Brentford fixtures. So yes, I don't think a lot of you will be going for this exact team with Jamie Vardy and Maddison, but I still would highly recommend it and at least consider the possibility. And if you maybe make a few downgrades elsewhere, you could easily go from Jamie Vardy to Harry Kane, who has around 15% ownership, and he's still a relative differential, all things considered. But Jamie Vardy is one of the best FPL options of the last few seasons. He scored 133 points last season despite the lack of minutes, and he's also got two 200 plus point seasons, a bit similar to Raheem Sterling. So a lot to like with Jamie Vardy, but it's going to be very difficult, at least for most people, to envisage a team with Jamie Vardy and James Maddison in it from the get-go. Before the game launched, Ivan Toney was an extremely popular option, but now only 6.2% ownership at the time of this recording. He had a very good end to the last campaign, but one thing that really puts me off is the departure of Christian Eriksen to Man United. He became a free agent and now he's signing with the Red Devils, and he was a really big reason why Ivan Toney had that upturn in form. Brentford changed formations and Ivan Toney was given more license to be in the box, which is where he did a great job in the Championship when he broke records, until Mitrovic smashed them, of course, in the last campaign. 12 goals and 5 assists is a decent return for his first Premier League season, but I would be concerned, and I've said this all along, with Brentford, yes, they can still do a great job. They've got some good players, and Thomas Frank has done an incredible job, but I'd be a bit concerned about second season syndrome with the Bees. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you just never know. A great set of fixtures, not just from Game Weeks 1 to 5, but also longer term until Game Weeks 10, but let's keep an eye on Ivan Toney. He's just a great differential though at 6.2% ownership, and he's my favourite option around 7 million and under in the forward positions, but I would still be a bit concerned, and I'm not as appealed by Ivan Toney as I once was. If Eriksen had signed that contract with Brentford, he definitely would be right up there in terms of ownership, and also I think he would be in my plans in Game Week 1. Callum Wilson featured in my first draft video despite some tricky opening fixtures. 8 goals in 18 games. He had very, very limited minutes due to injuries, only 4.4% ownership. The main concern with him is he going to stay injury-free? That is the main concern. Only 75 points last season, and he scored over 100 points in 4 seasons. But the main issue really, once again, is the fitness. And if he can stay fit, I think Newcastle will give him better service than in years gone by. And I can see him maybe setting a personal best and matching what he was doing at Bournemouth. But that's all speculation. I just really like his ownership, and he's probably my favourite medium price forward alongside Ivan Toney. If I had to pick one, it probably would be Callum Wilson, but then you look at the fixtures, and if you're a fixtures person, then Ivan Toney would probably take the cake. It's very close between the two. They both have some very extremely appealing ownerships, but at the same time there are pros and cons behind all of these picks. Now let me show you how this team would look like in Game Week 1 and who I would start, who I would captain and all of that good stuff, and who am I going to pick between Raheem Sterling and Bruno Fernandes, because there's only a spot for one of them. The two other players that I haven't covered are Caballero and Colback. They are more differential options at 4 million and also 4.5 million respectively. But if you're asking me, who do I prefer in those positions? Yes, they're more highly owned, but you look at Gazzaniga at 4 million. He's probably more likely to start than his fellow Argentine. And then instead of Colback, it has to be Andreas Pereira, who's probably going to play as an attacking midfielder, if not as a winger for Fulham. A bit of a Fabio Carvalho replacement, and he could be a really good option, a game-breaking one potentially. at that price point. But in terms of the players we covered, Martinez in goal, that's fairly obvious. Away to Bournemouth is a bit tricky. These newly promoted sides tend to do very well in their first home game. They're going to be right up for it. Then you've got BOTMAN there at home to Nottingham Forest. Laporte away to West Ham alongside the likes of MAHREZ. Raheem Sterling, though, won't be having that same game because he's on the verge of joining Chelsea. The Blues visit Everton away, and they tend to struggle in that stadium, so maybe Raheem Sterling isn't the greatest choice. Bruno Fernandes at home to Brighton tends to do very well against them. Maybe he could be your pick over Raheem Sterling, but a lot of factors behind that kind of pick between the two. It's very difficult to separate them, but they can finally become great FPL options once again, which is great to see. You want more different options to choose from, and it kind of breaks open the template a little bit. But you also have MATIP and Robertson away to Fulham. This team obviously doesn't have any Liverpool attacker, which might be the main issue, but you could always go for Jota or Nunez up front. Diaz and Salah, though, their ownership is way too high to kind of feature in this team. James Maddison and Vardy as a combination is really good for game weeks 1 and 3. Maybe not so much in the other game weeks to open the season, which is a bit of a shame. JARROD Bowen at home to Man City. You could arguably go for Ivan Toney away to Leicester instead, because I could see Brentford scoring some goals, despite the fact that Leicester are the favourites in that match. And then Callum Wilson's also at home to Nottingham Forest. So this team actually looks very solid for game week 1 and also to start the season. But if you're asking me, I wouldn't go for this team exactly, because you're still missing some very big players such as Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Erling Haaland, Mohamed Salah, and also potentially Trent Alexander-Arnold and a Chelsea fullback. So look, you can't cover everything. This is a best differentials team, and it's just more options to consider that we haven't really discussed in the previous videos, and something a bit different, which is what I really wanted to push for. If you want to see more different types of videos, such as the best defenders, midfielders and forwards, and we can break it down in terms of each price point, then let me know. And if there's any other ideas for new types of videos, I'm all ears. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to 200 likes. It'd be massively appreciated. And I wish you all the very best of luck for the next FPL season. And just enjoy your summer break. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, where I'll keep you updated on any news, not just for FPL, UCL Fantasy and F1 Fantasy, but also in terms of the content. You can also become a Patreon or channel member. The links are in the description below. And you can also join the FPL League, which was on screen throughout the whole video, and also in the description. There's also the Discord server. There's a lot of stuff in there, so check it out. Take care, enjoy the football, and I'll see you next time.